Everyone is muted, but you can unmute yourself at the end of the presentation and ask questions, or feel free to type your questions in the chat at any time. As for the agenda, we will give you a quick overview of the Recreation Grant Program and the new grant round, tips for how to apply, eligibility requirements, design and long-term considerations. Then there will be time for questions and some scenarios at the end. Okay. There are two other key contacts here at DEM's Office of Planning Development, Megan Dupree and Michelle Sheehan. Is Michelle, she's saying hi? And Megan Dupree, right there, okay. All right, okay, for an overview of the Outdoor Recreation Grant Program. The Outdoor Recreation Grant Program was established in 1988, and 541 grants totaling over 85 million have been awarded so far. These grants are sourced from state bond funds voted at the polls and have received tremendous support over the years. Grants support a wide range of local outdoor recreation, including playgrounds, athletic fields, tennis courts, and splash parks. So since 1988, cities and towns throughout Rhode Island have worked hard to build these special outdoor places, and demand for more parks and playgrounds is stronger than ever. The Outdoor Recreation Grant Program is one of 3 local grant programs we call green space programs, administered within DEM's Office of Planning and Development. The other 2 are the recreation trails and open space. You may have seen these signs around the state as we're asking people to post these signs at these grant funded projects. More information about these programs is on our website on the link shown. Okay, now on to the new grant round, the reason why we're all here. $4 million is now available through the 2021 Beach Clean Water and Green Bond. The bond received tremendous support at the polls with an 80% approval rate. The grant program provides funds to local municipalities to acquire, develop, or renovate outdoor recreation facilities. We are now accepting applications in these 3 categories. Note that the required match for both development grants is 20% and can be all in kind, and 50% for land acquisition, which can be donated. DEM contributes 50% of the approved appraised value. Okay. Let's go over how to apply for a grant. Go to the DEM website. The link is in the press release, and Michelle will post it in the chat as well. Download the application and instructions. It's all in one form. It includes both categories, and it's all in one fillable Word file. Save the form on your computer and type in the spaces shown, similar to what we've done in the past. When filling out the form, here's some things to keep in mind. The text spaces will expand as you type, but please be concise. The budget forms can be tricky since it's an Excel sheet embedded into a Word document. You'll need to click inside the spreadsheet to open the Excel form and then click outside to close it. If you have any problems, just give me a call. Submit the application and supporting documents as attachments to an email and send it to me. Keep the application in a Word format. Please don't convert it to PDF. And when emailing the attachments, keep in mind the state has a maximum email size of 20 megabytes, so you may need to send more than one email. If you have any problems emailing the application, you can always drop it off here at DEM in Providence. Remember, the deadline is Friday, December 17th at 3 p.m. Try and submit a few days before you can. You never know what kind of problems can crop up at the last minute. Okay. On to eligibility requirements. There are 3 types. There's applicant eligibility, site eligibility, and project eligibility. Applicants must be a municipal agency or a recognized Native American tribe. Municipal agencies may partner with non-municipal entities, but the municipality must be the applicant. Note that school departments do not qualify as municipal agencies, so they cannot be an applicant. It's important to note site eligibility requirements because of the public access and perpetuity requirement. The property should be owned by the municipality such that the municipality has 3 important things: custody of the facility, can control the use of the facility, and be responsible for the facility's maintenance and care. Some variations are that the land could be owned and operated by a school department. but the school has to officially grant custody and control of the facility to the municipality. Also, the land could be privately owned, but the municipality must own a perpetual easement over the land to ensure continued use and public access. An application would be ineligible if the town, say, proposed to lease land from a private landowner to construct a kayak launch, for example, because the lease does not ensure the use and public access of the site in perpetuity, it would be ineligible to apply. All right. Now, project eligibility. Proposed projects must be to acquire, develop, or renovate outdoor recreational facilities and maintain them as open public space in perpetuity. For acquisition projects, this includes the purchase of fee simple title to land that will be developed for outdoor recreation in accordance with a master plan. The grant reimburses the cost of the land and requires a public recreation easement on the land in exchange. For a development project, this includes construction of outdoor recreation and support facilities such as restrooms, parking, and lighting. The grant reimburses eligible development costs incurred within the grant period. Typical examples are that the city or town proposes to develop a new basketball court on town-owned land, or the city renovates an old playground that was properly maintained, but is now beyond its expected lifespan and has become a safety hazard. Some examples of ineligible projects are projects that primarily involve planning without proposing new or expanded uses. An example would be an application that proposes to develop a master plan, but doesn't include any actual building of the facilities, just the master plan. Also ineligible are projects that would significantly limit public access. For example, a playground near or in a school that is closed to the public most of the day, and projects that are primarily for normal maintenance and repair. Examples would be resurfacing of existing basketball courts without adding any new expanded recreation resources. Okay. All right, so here are some considerations for development projects that you may be applying for. Please list all the permitting requirements on the application. And these are state permits, wetlands, brownfields, and site remediation. Applications will be made available to permitting agencies to help flag potential concerns so that issues can be addressed at this early design and pre-application stage. For projects with more complex permitting needs, we really recommend that you schedule a pre-application meeting with DEM's Office of Customer and Technical Assistance. The contact there is Ron Gagnon, and he can provide us with a summary of the meeting, and that would be very helpful. For site design considerations, applications will be reviewed by the Rhode Island Historical Preservation and Heritage Commission. Our contact there is Elizabeth Totten, who coordinates project reviews, and the Governor's Commission on Disabilities. Our contact is Denise Wilhelm. I'm not sure if Megan wants to say a few words here.
Thanks, Lisa. Sure, I can jump in. I know Denise had hoped to be here today. We've really discovered that we need to take a broader view at accessibility issues. So it's important that any recreation projects that are funded with these state funds comply with all regulatory requirements, whether it's wetlands, whether it's bidding and procurement, and at least ADA requirements as a minimum. So if you're proposing a play area, there has to be an ADA compliant surface to it. Some of the components have to be ADA compliant. There have to be pathways that are ADA compliant, and you have to be able to get to the play area. So as you look at projects, really think about how things work right from the time you drive or walk to the site. How do you get to these facilities? And do check in with Denise. She is super, super busy, but an incredible resource, really responsive. And it's important, increasingly so, to pay attention to this topic right from the get-go.
Okay, thank you, Megan. Okay, and there's Denise's contact information right there. Okay, moving on. All right, so there are some new elements to the grant application and administration that I wanted to make you aware of. I hope you're enjoying these photos that I put in here from different projects that were funded by this grant program. Regarding the narrative summary, this section was previously called project description, but we really need a summary of what clearly identifies and describes the problem and how the proposal will directly address this problem. So the application form's been revised to emphasize that. Also ensure the scope of work is feasible. We had to draw a hard line with unauthorized changes to the scope of work after awards were made. Now grant awards may be reduced as a result. This is important from a fairness and legal issue, since applications are reviewed and scored based on what is being proposed, and then the scope of work is included in the legal contract after an award is made. So be sure all elements of the proposed scope of work are feasible from a permitting, funding, accessibility, community support perspective. Certificates of compliance. We now require a signed COC with every reimbursement request to confirm that grantees are aware of their responsibilities with permitting, accessibility, and purchasing requirements. Please keep in mind that municipalities are ultimately responsible for compliance. We have now a copy of a recorded notice of grant agreement, which is now required prior to final reimbursement. This is to ensure proper documentation and land evidence records and helps prevent unintentional conversions to out of recreational use going forward in the future. Replacing existing recreational resources. We recommend that you submit a strong rationale and document extensive public outreach if this is part of your proposal. This has come up as an issue, so we'll be looking at how it is addressed in the application. And there's a new budget form for development grants, which asks for more details on how funds will be spent. And this will help us better understand what is being proposed and whether there are sufficient funds to complete the project as proposed. Okay. All right, here are some application tips. Remember to tell the story and speak to the scoring criteria when answering the questions in the application. Remember, applications will be scored and ranked based on your responses and how you relate to the questions that are being asked. Use careful consideration in developing boundary plans, which should follow the existing property lines. The exception would be if you had a proposed project in a very small portion of a larger project, and then you can call me and we can discuss how to make those boundary plans. The boundary plan depicts the area that will be subject to public access requirements in perpetuity, so they're important. There's no limit on the number of applications you can submit, but each application must be prioritized with the highest priority receiving the most points, up to 5 points, working down to 0. Match is calculated based on total project costs, not a percentage of the grant amount. So see the application for examples. Match for development projects can be 100% in kind and non-cash, such as municipal staff and equipment and our volunteers. Match for acquisition projects are 50% of the land value. Waiver of retroactivity requests are being accepted now and until awards are announced in mid-April. This is used to request eligible match incurred after the grant announcement be applied retroactively. Note that this applies to matching expenses only and not reimbursable grant funds. Grant periods planned now for a 3-year grant period with a possible extension of no more than 2 additional years. Requests for extensions need to include justification and be requested in a timely manner. So that's some application tips. Okay, moving on to long-term considerations. All right. So I've listed them here. Maintain public outdoor recreation use in perpetuity, post green space sign or similar. We do provide a small green space sign that you can post, but if you want to incorporate it into your own sign, that's fine. We can send you the electronic files for that. DM public recreation easements on acquisition properties. And I especially wanted to point out and reinforce this fee policy because it has come up as an issue in the past. In some cases, towns have had to go to their councils to make fee changes in order to apply for grant. So the fee policy is if no fees are charged to city town residents, then fees cannot be charged to other Rhode Island residents. If fees are charged to city town residents, then fees to other Rhode Island residents cannot be more than twice the city town resident fee. Okay. Call me with any questions on that one too. All right, moving on. Okay, so we have some scenarios we can go over, but I thought we could pause here to see if there are any questions. Michelle, do you see anything in the chat?
No, I don't. But actually I do see one. And just so everyone knows, you can ask the question in the chat button, or if you would like to raise your hand and ask it, verbally, you can also do that. If people remember how to raise your hand, there's a button. on the bottom right that allows you to do that. It's like the reactions button. You have to click on that and then go to raise your hand. But the first question we have in the chat from Lauren Avery says, are the design and impact reviews done as part of the application process?
The design and impact reviews done as part of the application process. So we make the applications available to the various permitting and other agencies that I listed, the Historic Preservation and the Governor's Commission on Disabilities. And we do that so that if there are any red flags, they could let us know. And then in that case, I would contact the applicant and ask questions or try to resolve what the issues or the questions are. The point of that is so that we don't get too far along with an application that could not be eligible. So we try to resolve it at an early stage. So I guess, yes, it would be partially, done at the design, at the application process.
Okay, and then
maybe can I just jump on there? For folks who meet with Ron Gagnon's team in the Office of Technical and Customer Assistance, it's great to do that as you are formulating your project so that you have Ron Gagnon's notes along with your application materials. I think Lisa mentioned that earlier.
And the follow-up question from Laureen is, should we budget money to cover those reviews?
There is no review fee involved. So I'm not sure what you're talking about in terms of
Time consideration, though, maybe, certainly.
Oh, if you were going to be attending pre-application meetings, probably.
Okay. The next question is, can you elaborate on the local public participation requirements in the grant application?
Sure. It's listed in the instructions. And the purpose of this is to make sure that the project is fully vetted by the public and has consensus before you apply. So what we're asking for is that that you hold at least one public meeting or hearing with a proper public notice, not more than 6 months prior to grant submission, to ensure the proposed project has been thoroughly vetted and public officials and residents support the project before the application is reviewed. This is a requirement for all project categories, regardless of the funding levels. And then we ask you that you submit the agenda and meeting or hearing minutes demonstrating that the project was presented and discussed at a meeting or hearing, either of the town or city council, a planning board meeting, or other similar public meeting. The notice requirement can be met through an advertisement in local public paper or a posting on the Secretary of State's website. The meeting can be a special public hearing or a regularly scheduled meeting with the proposed project listed as a separate item on the agenda. The project must be fully presented and discussed with an opportunity for public input. And you can submit the draft minutes with the application if you don't have the final approved minutes at that point, and just follow up with the final approved minutes when you have them.
Okay, and then Rob Bauer has his hand raised. Rob, if you want to lower your hand and then unmute yourself, we can hear your question. I think Rob went away. So,
thank you.
Oh, there
Thank
you are. Good.
Michelle. Yeah.
Yep.
We're looking at trying to preserve a farm in a greenway abutting other conserved property, and looking at development rights, but I don't think that's part of this grant. But I did hear you say that trail easement might be a possibility. So depending on what the property owner is willing to do, would it be an option to either purchase the trail corridor or purchase an easement for the trail? This would be connecting greenway properties, town school properties, and a park.
Lisa, do you want me to take that one?
Yes, please.
I think that, yeah, I mean, that would fall under the recreation acquisition category here. And yes, certainly you could either acquire the fee or an easement for the trail. It would need to be a perpetual easement, obviously.
Okay.
And again, what the grant funds is 50% of the approved appraised value of that acquisition.
Right.
And so the remaining 50% can be donated value or just cash match. And then we record a perpetual recreation easement over that. So it would be like, we could maybe co-hold the easement if you were purchasing an easement. And then if you were purchasing the fee, we would, hold a recreation easement over that fee acquisition.
And would the purchase have to be through the municipality, or could the land trust buy it? It's a municipal land trust.
So whoever is applying for the grant needs to hold that. If it's a municipal land trust and you have the same tax ID, that's fine. But you can't like have the town apply and receive the grant and then the land trust buy the easement or the fee.
Right. But the land trust could oversee the conservation easement in a situation like that, or
Yes.
probably DEM would, but thank you. Then I wasn't clear, development rights are not a possibility under this, or are they for the full farm?
We might talk about that offline. That's a really specific thing, but I do think that that would be eligible if you're purchasing essentially something that provides a perpetual recreation asset to the town. But
Okay.
Let's talk about the details over the phone.
Thanks, Michelle.
Yeah. Okay, and then we have a question from Scott who asks, is it possible to get the scoring details or feedback on past unsuccessful applications?
Sure, that's a really good question. Feel free to call me and we can provide you with that information, Scott. Okay.
Okay, I don't see any questions in the chat, but if anyone else has questions now, certainly raise your hand or put it in the chat.
Okay. Seeing nothing, we'll just continue on to some scenarios that we put together. This might help raise some questions. Let's see. All right. So scenario number one. All right. We have a piece of property next to the current ball fields, and there's a lot of pressure for more parking. There are some wetlands nearby, so we are not sure what will be involved. Can we use these funds to do some design and permitting? Well, the answer is yes, if the application is for both design, permitting, and construction. Can't be just for design and permitting alone. The parking must be for recreational resource. Applicant must have ownership or control, custody, and care over the property. The application will be scored on how well it demonstrates a significant portion of the project would be for construction of the actual recreation resource, not just for design permitting. All righty, on to scenario number two. Okay, we represent the school department and want to build a running track for students at the high school through city-owned property adjacent to the historical district. What can we apply for a rec grant? No, the school department, unfortunately, school departments are not eligible to apply. But since the municipality has custody control over the property, the municipality can partner with the school department and be an applicant. So the application will be scored on how well it demonstrates significant public access, physical access, as well as availability to hours to the general public, not just to schools. This is a special consideration for schools and facilities that are on or near school properties, because we understand that schools need to use these fields for their practices and so forth, but it has to be reasonably open to the public on those other times and posted so that the public is aware of the time limits. And then there's always a question of potential impacts to historic resource. Okay. Scenario number three. Okay, we have kept track of the time spent so far to plan the project, write the grant application, etc. Is this staff time considered reimbursable? How about volunteer efforts to date to prep the site? Also, we have a few small pots of funds available. Can we use them as match for the project? Answer is generally the project begins when a purchase order is issued after a grant contract is fully executed. That's when eligible costs begin. So staff time is not reimbursable, but both staff and volunteer time can be used as match if within the approved grant period. If match costs are incurred prior to the award, submit a request for a waiver of retroactivity prior to the award. And we are accepting those letters now, those requests now. You list the expected matching expenses and request the retroactive credit. Here's a link to what we use for calculating volunteer time. I think this is actually from last year. The rate was $26.82 per hour, but you can check there on that link to see if that's been changed. And small pots, towns funds can certainly be used to match this grant.
Before we go
right.
on to the next scenario, Lisa, we did have another question from Rod.
Oh.
He asked if development can be combined with a fee purchase, or do they need to be separate applications?
So in other words, you want to submit an application to purchase land and then also to develop on that land. Those would,
Yes.
be, is that right? Those would be two separate applications.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, yep. All right, did we do, let's see. Okay, 3. Nope, 4. Sorry. All right, the town wants to renovate an existing town beach by building a shade structure, adding restrooms and updating and expanding the beach parking area. Can the town continue to charge non-town residents a $10 fee to park in the beach parking area? There is currently no fee for residents to park. So prior to accepting a grant award, the town will agree to the fee policy. Well, actually, that's prior to applying or having your grant application accepted. We want to make sure the fee policy is not going to be an issue. So here I'm restating what the fee policy is. And the reason for this is that grants are sourced through Rhode Island state bond funds, and grant funded projects must benefit all Rhode Islanders. Okay. Scenario number 5, for the municipal approval requirement, does the documentation we submit with the application need to be a letter or a formal resolution? Well, the answer is it can be any of all of these, however it applies. Again, the point is just to make sure that it does happen in a timely manner and the project is discussed in public. Here again, tips, it must be an open, public, and properly noticed city town council meeting, authorizing the submission of the grant application and authorize the municipality's matching contribution. So actually there's 2 requirements here I want to be clear on. There's the municipal approval requirement that says the city and town does agree to submit the application and would be responsible for the match. And then there's the public participation requirement where you have to have a public meeting where the project is formally vetted. And so I just want to make sure that's clear. So you're submitting 2 separate documents. One would be that you've been to the town council meeting and they agreed to submit the application. The other one is that you've had a public meeting where people have had a chance to see the project and provide their comments. Okay, any questions on that?
Actually, on the previous slide, Karen Pinch pointed out that I just tried it, that website, the independentsector.org volunteer time is not, it's a 404 finding. So we can correct that link and let you know what it is. Maybe Lisa, you can send out an email with that.
Sure, sorry about that. I should have checked that before. Okay. All right.
You know what, I can probably just find it and put it in the chat, but.
Oh, good. Okay. Okay, and to our last scenario, scenario 6. The city wants to add a community stage and restrooms inside the existing community center. Considerations are these grants are required to support the development, renovation, and expansion of outdoor recreational resources in the state. So the project will be evaluated on how it can demonstrate the support of significant outdoor recreation resources. So keep that in mind as well. Okay, that's all I have for slides. Any other questions?
Yes, actually, we have a few other ones. Hold on one second. So Lorraine asked, for acquisitions, do you need to have a firm value for the purchase, such as an appraisal? And I would say it would be nice if you had a very clear understanding, because the award, you know, is for, you know, 50%. And so if that's going to change after the fact, it's much easier for us to go down than up. It's not required at the time of application. It's strongly encouraged. I mean, I understand that it's difficult to get appraisals going right now, given the market and appraisers being very busy. But that is the ideal scenario. And then the next question, and feel free to be in touch with me on that, Lorene, if that wasn't as clear as it should be. And then Alicia asks, can the matching contribution be land contribution from a private landowner, provided there will be public access on the private land?
I would say yes, that would be eligible for matching contribution.
I think though that public access on the private land would need to be documented via a perpetual easement that was recorded with the city.
Right.
And province.
And the timing would be important as well. Typically matching sources should occur within the grant period. So if this is occurring after the grant announcement date and prior to the award, we would need a request for a waiver of retroactivity so that you can get credit for that matching contribution if the award was made.
And just so people know, Megan found the link for that volunteer time rate. So that is now in the chat.
Thank you.
Okay,
All
so
right.
I think that is it for questions. This is the last call for questions, so people can raise their hand or type it in the chat. But just remember, Lisa, is very available to answer any questions you may have via email or, over the next couple of months as you get ready to submit your applications. Oh, Megan has a question.
Actually, just a comment. Lisa, you did a remarkable job. There is a lot of information that was like whew, brain dumped out here, but it's not hidden. It's all in the application materials and the guideline materials that Lisa has circulated. They're posted on the website. So it's a lot of information, but it's all readily available. And I think Lisa's points early on were tell the story and speak to those scoring criteria. A lot of the questions that come up really are answered in that material. So take a look through and pay attention to impacts on wetlands. Check that out. If you're concerned about that, go to the wetlands folks and the Office of Technical and Customer Assistance. Make sure that it's going to be ADA compliant. Reach out to the Governor's Commission on Disabilities. If it's an historic property or it used to be, or there's historic buildings there, give a call to Rhode Island Historic Preservation and Heritage Commission. Make sure it's a good, tight document that addresses the scoring criteria. That will really help the evaluators understand the proposal and how to rank it. So great job.
And actually, we did have two more questions. One from Nell, who asks, can the ARPA or revenue replacement money be used as the match requirement? So that's federal match.
That's a good one. I don't see why not, but I will double check. Perhaps you could send me a quick email, Nell, so I have your contact information and I will just verify that that's eligible.
And then Alicia asks if the presentation will be available as well.
Yes, we are recording this presentation and we plan to put it on our DEM webpage probably in a few days.
And that will be posted right where the application and everything is.
Right, that's right. Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. That's it. All right. Well, again, thank you again for taking the time to meet with us today. Please don't hesitate to contact us if you have any questions or need help submitting the application, and enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye now.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks so much, Lisa.
Thank you.